like it's a peace deal in Ukraine. All right, power panel on the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, Yasmin Khan, Maz Jobrani. Yasmin's on Rebel headquarters. Maz is everywhere. Also on Rebel headquarters, by the way, killing it. Both of you guys are killing it on Rebel headquarters. Everybody check that out on YouTube. This might be our first all Muslim power panel. So very powerful. At least we were Muslims at some point in our lives. Okay, anyways, but we're not mainly in the news. Ukraine, the Oval Office, and many other things are. That story is amazing and has a lot of twists and turns that a lot of folks don't know yet. A lot of breaking news on it that is super important. So let's go to that right away. Yes, take it away.
Yeah, breaking news and one of our more ridiculous stories, but let's roll the tape first.
You have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You will not have war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
Have you said thank you once? This entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you?
We gave you military equipment, and you men are brave, but they had to use our military.
What about
if you didn't have our military equipment, if you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks. What if anything? What if a bomb drops on your head right now? Okay? What if they break it? This is going to be great television, I will say that.
All right, so as you can see, that was a joint press conference with President Donald Trump, Vice President JD Vance, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Things got a little out of hand today, and the negotiations between Ukraine and the US have collapsed, at least for the time being. We have more video to show you, but Cenk, what do you make of this? This is crazy.
Yeah, so we got to get you the details, which are just coming in now, because what happened before the meeting, it turns out, is the most critical part and what probably led to the blow up in the meeting. We're asking you in the live chat, who's at fault here, Zelenskyy or Trump and Vance? That's a little complicated in my opinion. I think there's plenty of blame on both sides, and I don't say that in a both sidism kind of way. I think that as you'll see here in the commentary, I think Zelenskyy did one thing to trigger all this, but ultimately, especially when you find out what happened before the meeting, the blame's going to shift over to the folks who are trying to get something out of Ukraine that doesn't make any sense, and that's totally wrong. So I think it is Trump and Vance ultimately, but let's take you through the twists and turns first. Yeah, it's back to you.
Okay, so yeah, we do have some details. It is still a developing story. But in the exchange, it began whenever Trump asked if he was aligning, or he was asked if he was aligning with either Ukraine or Russia too much. Trump argued that because he's trying to make a deal with both Russia and Ukraine, he's not aligning with either of them, and he just wants what's better for us here in the United States. JD Vance then, he jumped in on Trump's answer to bash President Joe Biden. Don't know why that was relevant, saying that Biden was all talk and no action, but Trump's administration was doing the right thing by engaging in diplomacy. As you just saw in that clip, that was diplomacy that was happening. And then Zelenskyy jumped in on that statement, and he started telling JD Vance that previous efforts at diplomacy between Ukraine and Russia resulted in Russia invading Ukraine in 2022. And he asked what would be different this time. And that is when things really started to go off the rails. Let's take a look.
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring it into this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know that what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military? And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
Okay, so then Zelenskyy replied to all of that by suggesting that Russia could possibly threaten the United States in the future before long, which Trump did not like. Here's that.
During the war, everybody has problems, even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You will not have war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's exactly
Remember
what you're doing.
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
Feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's back to you, far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Ooh, that's giving me a headache. But afterwards, they all shook hands and everybody started to get along a lot better. Just kidding. That's not what happened at all. Here's more.
You think that if you will speak very loudly about the war,
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country's in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No. You've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning.
I know.
You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
you haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet,
You
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this cabinet.
We gave you, through this stupid president, $350 billion.
You voted
we gave
for
you
your
military
president.
equipment, and you
voted
men
for
are
your
brave,
president.
but they had to use our military.
What about
If you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days, this is something
Maybe
new.
less.
In 2 weeks, of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this. I tell you.
Just say thank you.
I said a lot of times to American people.
Accept that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong.
Okay, so all of it finally ended when a reporter asked one final question of the three gentlemen there and asked what would happen if Russia and Ukraine did sign a ceasefire agreement, but then Russia went on to violate it. But Trump was like, don't talk about my boy Putin like that. Things got extra heated. Here's that.
What if a bomb drops on your head right now? Okay? What if they broke it? I don't know. They broke it with Biden because Biden, they didn't respect him. They didn't respect Obama. They respect me. He might have broken deals with Obama and Bush, and he might have broken them with Biden. He did, maybe. Maybe he didn't. I don't know what happened. But he didn't break them with me. He wants to make a deal. I don't know if you can make a deal. The problem is I've empowered you to be a tough guy. And I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. And your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out. But you don't have the cards. But once we sign that deal, you're in a much better position. But you're not acting at all thankful. And that's not a nice thing. I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing. All right, I think we've seen enough. What do you think?
What's this negotiation?
This is going to be great television, I will say that.
So there was supposed to be another joint conference after that later that day, but the White House has canceled it. As you can imagine, Trump also issued the following statement on Truth Social. It said, "This is a statement from President Donald J. Trump. We had a very meaningful meeting in the White House today. Much was learned that could never be understood without conversation under such fire and pressure. It's amazing what comes out through emotion, and I have determined that President Zelenskyy is not ready for peace if America is involved, because he feels our involvement gives him a big advantage in negotiations. I don't want advantage, I want peace. He disrespected the United States of America in its cherished Oval Office. He can come back when he is ready for peace." Go to your room. You can come back when you're ready to talk. But now that we've shown you the whole dramatic situation, the whole confrontation, we should note that according to a report by Fox News, tensions were already high going into this meeting. They report, according to sources close to Zelenskyy, tempers had flared even before the event began. The Ukrainian president was apparently presented with a minerals for security agreement by the Trump administration prior to the press event, but the deal included no security guarantees to protect Ukraine from another Russian invasion. Zelenskyy had warned repeatedly ahead of his trip to Washington, D.C. that in order to reach a mineral agreement, Kyiv needed these security assurances. Even so, he angered Trump and Vance by rejecting the deal, a source said. And then John Hudson tweeted that the Trump administration is considering ending all ongoing shipments of military aid to Ukraine in response to Zelenskyy's remarks in the Oval Office on Friday and his perceived intransigence in the peace process per senior administration official. This is complicated because we know that these highly diplomatic negotiations, and I guess it feels weird calling this diplomacy because it was so undiplomatic, but that's what this is, right? So whenever you have these big world global conflicts, geopolitical conflicts that involve millions and millions of people, as Trump pointed out, everything also feels so fickle, right? It's so big, but also so fickle, so easily breakable. And I am worried that just because Zelenskyy lost his temper a little bit or appeared ungrateful in the eyes of Trump and Vance, that millions and millions of people could indeed suffer for it. So, Cenk, what do you make of all this?
So I'm going to say what I think Zelenskyy did wrong, and then Trump and Vance. But understand that the mineral rights are what's causing all of this, and understand that the top mineral we're talking about is lithium. That's what goes into Tesla's batteries. So that's the curveball here. Elon somehow got involved in this mess. And now we can't get to a negotiated peace that we all want because now there's a third actor involved, America / all of Elon Musk corporations saying, no, I want a piece of the action. Where the hell did you come from? And why are you making this harder? Okay, so I'll get back to that. So in terms of what Zelenskyy did wrong, look, I watched the whole thing. You got 40 minutes in the beginning. Things are going relatively okay. Then where did it start to go wrong? It was Zelenskyy asking Vance a question. Now normally they're answering the reporters' questions, and Zelenskyy asked a question of Vance that did challenge him. Now it wasn't rude, but it was challenging, right? So he didn't call him any names. He didn't say the things that Trump and Vance said that you just saw with your own eyes. But Zelenskyy started that interaction. Okay, then from then on, JD Vance took apparently great offense to that and then just started insulting him and Ukraine and the war effort, and then it devolved and you saw the rest. Okay, so you could say, hey, if you're Zelenskyy and you're coming hat in hand and we've given them, we've assigned $183 billion to go there. We've already spent $140 billion. A little bit complicated because the weapons do go there, but there are older weapons. The money's actually going to defense contractors in America to get new weapons for us to keep. But 140 billion of weapons kind of has already gone to Ukraine. So, and also assistance outside of weapons. So as we're giving this to Ukraine, yeah, of course we're hoping that they're grateful for it, et cetera, et cetera. But now to be fair to Zelenskyy, he has said that he's grateful for it and thanks the American people and the government, I don't know, 200 times, 2,000 times. So Vance is making it seem like he's never done it. And I guess he caught feelings because Zelenskyy asked him a question and he thought that was disrespectful. Give us your goddamn minerals. We're not going to give you any security guarantees. And how dare you disrespect us? So now when you get to the fault of Vance and Trump, guys, I'm not like other people. And I think you all know that in a lot of ways. But what I mean by that is I mind that mess a lot less than I mind the substance, right? If we had that mess of a conflict in the Oval Office, everyone's like, oh, aghast, the diplomacy is broken down. Well, kind of, maybe, but it really depends on the substance and the result. So if you got that kind of weird shouting match that we don't expect, it is unprecedented in our lifetimes where the president yells at one of our allies in the Oval Office with cameras in there, but maybe chalk it up to transparency. Okay, I mean, that's a really generous take on it. But when you get to the substance, no, look at all these things that Trump and Vance in that confrontation are just giving away leverage to Russia in everything they say. They say you don't have enough manpower and you've got problems on the front lines. When you bring people into your country, you're just doing a propaganda tour, like he's the bad guy. And then, like, Russia's not doing propaganda, the Ukrainians are doing propaganda. Trump said over and over again, you're not in a good position. You don't have any cards. You might create World War III. You're not winning. So guys, why that's so important, no matter what side of the political divisions you are here in the US, I hope that all of us want to get to peace. When you are trying to get a deal with the other side, that is, yes, Russia is the other side here. You want to show as much strength on your side as possible. I mean, we're in good shape, Ukraine's in good shape. We can keep this war going forever. We don't want to, we want to get to a settlement, but we're really strong. That's how you create enough leverage so you can get to a compromise and a deal and to peace. That should be your goal. But every piece of leverage you give away, oh, Ukraine's in terrible shape. It's not winning. It doesn't have the right cards. It doesn't have enough manpower, and we might take its money away. Then Russia's going to go, why do I want a deal? I don't want a deal. I want everything now. I want to keep the land. Might want more land. I don't even know if I want peace if it turns out I'm going to be able to take this country when America withdraws. So if you're trying to get to peace, Trump and Vance could not have played it worse. But that gets to the heart of it, which is that I don't think they're trying to get to peace. Look, I gave Trump credit for, hey, listen, you want to drive towards peace? Great. Did I give Biden discredit for not trying to get to peace at all between Ukraine and Russia? I didn't see any effort at all. It seemed like they were thrilled to be draining Russian resources at the expense of the Ukrainian people and our budget, right? So if Trump was actually driving towards peace, even if it was a painful peace, which is what all peace negotiations are at the end and deals are, no problem. But if we're not trying to drive towards peace and we're just trying to get a whole bunch of minerals from them, then again, it's not a negotiation and it isn't diplomacy, it's just a robbery. And I'll remind you guys of this if you missed the earlier show. The way that this all took a giant curveball when Trump started calling Zelenskyy a dictator and pretending that Ukraine invaded Russia instead of the other way around. It's because all of a sudden our Treasury Secretary went to Ukraine, and met with Zelenskyy and passed him a piece of paper that said, we want $500 billion of your mineral rights in Ukraine for free. And Zelenskyy's like, what? And he's like, sign it now, sign it now. And Zelenskyy's like, I'm not gonna sign it now. This gives away the natural resources of my people. And you guys, again, have given 140 billion, and I really appreciate it, but why am I giving you back 500 billion? And who am I giving it to? It doesn't even clarify. Because guys, this is super important for you to understand, especially if you're in the right wing, or if you watch mainstream media and you've listened to this propaganda your whole life. When we rob the natural resources of another country, like whether it's in the Middle East for oil, or in this case now minerals in Ukraine, we don't get it. The American taxpayers don't get any of it. American corporations get it. And in this case, the corporation that needs lithium the most is Tesla. So this is a dirty deal the whole way through. And that's why Zelenskyy seemed to have a short temper there. I think he did have a short temper. But the reason is because he probably didn't even want this deal. They come in, they go minerals for security. He's like, God damn it, where the hell did this mineral thing come from? But okay, fine, I'll pay the ransom. And then they come in and they go, switcheroo, just kidding, no security guarantees, but give us the minerals anyway. As I've told you before, it reminds me of the Big Lebowski, where they say, we want the money anyway, Lebowski. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Is this a deal or is it not a deal? And what happened to negotiating with Russia? We've totally forgotten that. Instead, we're badgering and bashing and negotiating against our own ally. And now I see the right wing saying Ukraine's not an ally. Guys, I mean, I don't know what topsy-turvy world you're living in where Ukraine is not an ally, but what, Russia is? And what, Ukraine is the aggressor when we all saw with our own eyes Russia invade them? Yes, there's nuance in Russia wanting to not have NATO encroach on their borders, but there's no nuance that Russia definitely invaded Ukraine. Ukraine is definitely our ally. We took away their nukes and said, if you give your nukes away after the Soviet Union dissolved, we will protect you. How is that not our ally? So right now, the cause of peace has been set back greatly. And the number one culprit is the thing that the media is barely talking about, which is that our random insistence that American corporations get the natural resource of Ukraine in the middle of these negotiations, an issue that had not arisen at all before. All right, Maz.
Well, you make some good points. One of the things you said that actually then you also elaborated on, which talks to the fact that you said you're not as worried about what was happening, the decorum and all that stuff. But then you also came back and said that the problem is there's a negotiation going on, and the strategy, and basically they revealed their cards to Putin. I mean, Putin now has a much higher upper hand on this situation because he knows that America does not have Ukraine's back, and they did it in front of cameras. It's kind of like when Vito Corleone tells Sonny, don't talk about the family business in front of other people, and that's what they were doing here. So that's the danger in doing what they just did. It felt like JD Vance was this obsequious son who was angry at his brother and started yelling and said, "You don't respect dad." And Zelensky's going, "I respect dad. What do you mean I don't respect? You don't respect dad? You're gonna feel the pain too. We're not gonna feel the pain." I mean, it was just like, what is going on? And part of what I thought he was saying when he said you're gonna feel the pain, it's not just that Russia may start a war with America, but also the results of these types of things where you end up with people fleeing war-torn areas, people fleeing countries that have been attacked, and then here we are as Americans going, we don't want anyone else coming to America from these other countries, and yet we're involved in causing chaos in these countries so that those people will want to come here. And it goes back to your point also of the natural resources and how this is colonialism. This is modern colonialism. This is what we're doing, and we're getting in cahoots with Putin. And what I watched was that Trump and JD Vance are Russian assets. That's what I saw.
Yeah, I think that, look, I don't want to get into whether they're Russian assets. I genuinely don't know what Trump has with Putin, if they have deals or not. Guys, right now, as you're gonna find out later in the program with the other stories we're doing, there's just brazen bribery going on. There's the guy who runs a crypto company that just gave Trump's meme coin or whatever the F they're doing, $75 million. They're just literally bribing the president. And now Elon Musk is saying, oh, we're gonna cancel Verizon's deal with the FAA. Oh, okay, you're doing $2.4 billion in cuts. No, we're not cutting, we're reallocating to where? Starlink. That's your company, that's crazy. That's crazy. The robbery has begun, and the mineral in Ukraine is part of that robbery. So guys, here, one more thing. One of our members wrote in something, the same exact thing that I was thinking, and he put it well. Eclectic Miscellany on tyt.com says, so now we're yelling at world leaders in the Oval Office. Okay, Trump, now do Netanyahu. See, I think that contrast is really interesting because everybody can see, and by the way, the right wing was also aggrieved about this. When Netanyahu comes in, Trump is the nicest guy in the world. Oh, Mr. Prime Minister, oh, great to see you. He literally put in the chair for him like he was his butler or something. Trump did for Netanyahu. So kid gloves for Netanyahu and allies that are, on your team, whatever team that is, not Team America, but Team Trump and Team Jared Kushner, and et cetera, and whatever moronic plans you have for waterfront property in Gaza, all of a sudden everybody's hunky-dory. To your point, Maz, I don't know why Trump treats Putin like he's his best friend, but at the end there, we showed you a piece of it. He made Putin look like the victim. He's like, oh, poor, me and Vlad, we've been through so much. We went through the Russia hoax, and poor Vladimir and how he was treated by Biden and all this stuff. No, we don't say that. The guy now has invaded how many places? Georgia, Ukraine, Crimea, it goes on and on and on. And he's encroaching against our allies, and you make it seem like he's the victim. But Netanyahu is like the world's greatest guy. So I don't know who's funneling money to Trump or Elon Musk or to all these guys. But if you think that Trump and those guys don't care about their own personal well-being and their finances, you're unbelievably naive. So get to the American people's business. The American people don't care about your stupid company deals and whatever deals you have with Putin or Netanyahu or whoever's putting money into your stupid meme coin. We wanted peace. And yelling in like this in the Oval Office while you take away one piece of leverage from us after another, after another, after another, doesn't get you closer to peace. It gets you much, much further away from peace. And so look, last thing for me, if you want to get to say, okay, you know what, we're tired of paying for this. We can debate that, and I think that's a legitimate conversation. And I would say, hey, look, Europe keeps saying this is an existential threat. They've given about the same amount we have, maybe a little bit more than us. They're a little bit, European Union is a little bit larger than us. Their GDP is a little bit lower than us. But I can make an argument for the European Union carrying 2/3 of the load or 3/4 of the load here in this war. But that's about the American taxpayers, and we're not having that conversation. Instead, we're having a random conversation about lithium rights. This is crazy, and this is not how you take care of the American people or world peace.
Yeah, I think what stood out to me in that interaction was, first of all, it felt like a waste of energy because now that's going to be the conversation, especially in right-wing circles. I think we can expect to see a lot of conversation and discussions, especially on social media, about who was in the right, who lacked decorum, who was behaving in a way that they shouldn't have been acting. But at the end of the day, and Trump was the one who actually pointed this out, millions and millions of lives are at stake here. Millions and millions of lives are going to be affected in one way or another. So whatever these tantrums are that these big, strong men are having, that these rich, powerful men are having, they need to get over it. Whatever ego bruising they've endured here, they need to get over it because people are actually going to suffer on the ground, and here are just these people who are in a very cozy, comfortable office. And I'm not saying that Zelenskyy lives this way normally, because usually I know he is very involved in the war effort back home. But it's easy for Trump to say something like, you're a little ungrateful, so you need to be careful because otherwise millions and millions of lives are going to be affected. Coming from somebody like Trump, that is so rich because he makes decisions impulsively, it seems, that do impact millions and millions of people right here at home and around the world, right? He has no problem doing that. He has no sense of responsibility to these people apart from the fact that he needs their loyalty. And so he's willing to throw them a bone every once in a while. So this whole interaction feels more like it's just going to overwhelm the headlines and overtake the discussion regarding what happens as far as the United States relationship to Ukraine and to Russia, and our role in whether or not we continue funding Ukraine and their defense against Russia or whatever. And again, coming from Trump, this is the guy who just said that he wants to make the Gaza Strip into some kind of luxury resort. He tweeted this weird AI video which featured him, just on making a new Riviera in the Gaza Strip with a big Trump statue there. Like, that's that guy. He's not worried about the millions of lives of the Ukrainian people or the Russian people. And then to Cenk's point, yeah, this is all about resources. This is all about lithium. This is all about Elon Musk and his businesses. That's why we're involved in Greenland. That's why we're involved in Panama. That's the only reason why we're involved geopolitically anywhere in the world. And that is the case throughout history. The United States loves to pretend that, we go on these crusades around the world protecting democracy here, but we're very selective over which conflicts we choose to get involved in. And there's a reason why some of these conflicts are deemed to be more important than others, because some of them we have something to get out of and the other ones we just don't. It's not worth it for us to get involved, regardless of how much we posture about, what is the right thing to do. And we're the world superheroes and we're the ones who are going to protect all these people. That's just the PR aspect of things. That is just the politicization of what is actually going on. And what's actually going on is business, and the business of warfare. And what that means is, as Maz put it, colonization, colonialism.
And by the way, one other thing to keep in mind, Zelenskyy was jet lagged. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever flown to the other side of the world and gone into a meeting, but you're grumpy. And so he's got a little more excuse to act out the way he did than little diaper wearing JD Vance.
I mean, not just grumpy, but he's fighting a war at home. Trump isn't.
Yeah. He's like, I wake up for this. Why do I doing? Anyway, that's my impression.
Look, I think that he also was offended that They made it seem like the Ukrainian people fighting back against Russia was no big deal, and that it was all America, America. But I don't really, guys, whether they were offended, jet-lagged, etc. I don't think that, I think there's some chance Zelenskyy was so frustrated by the fake pretenses with which they brought him here that he might have, halfway consciously or subconsciously blown up this so-called deal because he didn't want it. Because he doesn't want it. I mean, if you don't have security guarantees, why is he giving away hundreds of billions of dollars in natural resource of his country? But and to be fair to Zelenskyy, if I was him, I wouldn't have taken that deal. That's crazy. I mean, they tell you, here, come on, we're gonna give you security guarantees if you give us the minerals. He gets here and they're like, just kidding. Now you go into the Oval Office and take the deal. We want your minerals and we're not giving you any security guarantees. Well, what does he get out of that? I'd have blown up the deal too. So
Trump had said before, I don't know if you saw this maybe a couple of days ago, he said, yes, you'll have security because we'll be in Ukraine working, with you for these minerals. So he was, using the pretense that since we'll have our companies there, you'll be secure. But we all know that's not how it goes. If an actual thing were to happen where there be further attacks on Russia, all you do is you pull out your American employees and you leave them there without security guarantees, like you were saying, Jenks. So absolutely, he's in the right to not take the deal.
Yeah. All right, guys, when we take the break, I'm gonna read a lot of your comments. So whether you're a member or using Super Chat, and I wanna thank new members, Mainframe Militia and Susan Cosanetti. Thank you for joining by hitting the join button below the video on YouTube, we appreciate it. And when we come back, a lot of different opinions. I'm gonna read it all and respond. We'll be right back. All right, back on the social break here. We'll go to YouTube members first. Hit the join button below to become one and be part of the show. We do the show live, of course, 6 o'clock Eastern every day. I'll start with my favorite comment. You'll see why in a second. Darth Dunedin wrote in, Cenk, you're a champion. Oh, what am I gonna do? I mean, they're saying it in the streets. Is that the streets? YouTube members. Anyway, Chrissy Bellin says, Vance had a canned argument that he was waiting to use. What a tool. And so the reason I read that is because Vance did have that lined up ready to go. If you could tell, Vance was already pissed too. Zelenskyy and Vance were already ready to fight. And probably Vance was ready to fight because he's like, why didn't you give us the goddamn minerals? We want it for free. By the way, Vance is not really JD Vance. He is just a servant of Peter Thiel. And Peter Thiel also has tons and tons of government contracts through his company Palantir. So JD Vance is representing one corporation, Donald Trump is representing another corporation. No one's representing the American people in this negotiations, if you ask me. Cody Rick says, I think negotiations between all parties were atrocious. I agree with that. And look, as frustrating as those attacks were, could Zelenskyy have been, if he wanted to be more conciliatory, to get more funding, etc., could he have been more diplomatic on his side? Of course he could have, right? I'm not blaming the brother. I get why he's frustrated. I just told you he has every right to be frustrated, and maybe even blow up the deal if they're just going to hold you, this deal hostage until you pay the ransom. So I get it, but it's not like he wasn't fighting back. No, Zelenskyy was also very mad and definitely fighting back. BC24 says it's not about right and wrong. It's about what is effective. And so that's right. If all this fighting back and forth in the Oval Office was effective, then I don't care at all. I'm the guy who cares about decorum the least, couldn't care less. But when the fight makes it less likely to get to a peace deal, which in this case was inarguable. No one thinks a peace deal is more likely now than before the meeting, right? So then I guess Trump and Vance feel good. I mean, even if you believe them, they feel good about venting about, oh, America has to be respected. And Trump doesn't mean America, he means I have to be respected. And my relationship with Putin does, etc. Chala's son says, why are we able to fund a Ukraine war but are firing federal workers? So first of all, remember this. None of these cuts, whether we cut the funding to Ukraine or the federal workers, are going to help the budget at all. Because they're doing a $4.6 trillion tax cut. All of these are a drop in the bucket for the $4.6 trillion that they're going to hand to the wealthiest people in this country. So you could afford the Ukraine war, you could afford the federal workers, etc. If you weren't giving away trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars to Donald Trump's donors, and yes, also to Democratic donors. So, but look, again, if you're concerned about the money we're spending in Ukraine, I think it's a legitimate concern, okay? But then you have to look at parity between Europe, etc., and actually look out for the American people as well as our allies, and that's not what's happening here. We'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Yaz, and Maz with you guys. By the way, if you want to join to become a member, you could hit the join button below, but you could also go to tyt.com where annual membership gets you 2 months off. All right, Yaz, what's the next story? Hold on, you're muted.
You're on mute.
It happens.
All right, roll the tape. There it is.
You said last week that you have the Epstein files on your desk. When can we see them, and what's taking so long to release them?
I do. Jesse, there are well over, this will make you sick, 200 victims. We have to make sure that their identity is protected. Other than that, I think tomorrow, Jesse, breaking news right now, you're gonna see some Epstein information being released by my office.
All right, well, today is tomorrow, and after hyping up the release of the long-awaited Jeffrey Epstein files and then delivering a whole lot of nothing, conservatives, MAGA people are upset at US Attorney General Pam Bondi, and she's beginning to feel the full force of the MAGA wrath. Cenk, I know you guys covered this a little bit on the show yesterday. Are you surprised that things have only gotten worse for Pam Bondi?
I'm not at all surprised. So MAGA's turning on Trump super hard on this one. And so that's gonna be really interesting to watch. We got some news on that. I had a little bit of an exchange with Elon Musk about this on X. We'll get to that as well. But right now, this does not look good for the Trump administration. And I have a prediction on this coming up in a minute as well. But let's get more of the details.
All right, well, I'm sure you do. So here are the details. This is reporting from The Independent. It says the information released on Thursday includes an evidence list, white logs, Epstein's contact book, and a redacted masseuse list featuring over 250 entries, much of which was already public. Some notable new information did crop up, however, including that Epstein had Mick Jagger, Michael Jackson, actor Alec Baldwin, and supermodel Naomi Campbell in his list of phone contacts. But there was more information that for some reason was not released. Can't imagine what that reason was. At least according to the letter Bondi sent FBI Director Kash Patel yesterday. It said Bondi suggested in a letter Thursday to FBI Director Kash Patel that more records were recently discovered. She ordered the FBI to hand over the full and complete Epstein files to her by Friday morning, and directed Patel conduct an immediate investigation into why her order to the FBI to turn over all the documents was not followed. And the shocker, the deadline for this was 8 a.m. on Friday, February 28th. That is today. Today is Friday, February 28th, and it's way after 8 a.m. And we still have nothing. The documents were never handed over, and MAGA is angry, like they're furious, specifically at Pam Bondi, not only because, again, most of the information that was released was already available under the Biden administration, but because the Trump administration pulled this little PR stunt regarding the whole thing. Here's a tweet from Laura Loomer, Trump's BFF, and she says, there is one person who takes the blame for what happened today. It's Pam Bondi. I think she should resign. She went on Fox News and said the files were on her desk. Then she went on Fox News last night and said we would have files today. She's a total liar. Just face it. That's not all she said. She had more. She said, I'm told the organizers of the event at the White House yesterday have told all of the influencers involved to post selfie videos denying Pam Bondi's involvement and to claim they all had no idea they were getting binders. Everything is so scripted. Pam is the one who handed them the binders and strutted into the meeting to make a big deal about the binders. How can they say she wasn't involved now? Are we resorting to lying now? I don't know. Is that what we're doing? Are we just lying now? Is that what they're doing? But MAGA isn't the only one. They're not just questioning Pam Bondi here. They're also starting to question Trump's leadership. So this is going all the way up to the top. Barstool Sports co-founder Dave Portnoy had this to say in a tweet yesterday. If I'm going to be fair, these questions need to be asked today. Why is the release of the Epstein list always a show? What's the point of booting out illegals and criminals while somehow becoming a safe haven for the Tate brothers? Why is crypto in the toilet if Trump is crypto king? How far does Tesla stock have to crash before Elon gets back to work? Those are all wonderful questions, and we would all like those answers. Elon Musk did quickly come to Bondi's defense, however, and he tried to soothe things over in the MAGA world. He said this, people don't understand that you don't get instant power here, which is funny coming from Elon Musk. He said, reposting an X post by user Wall Street Mav that said that the attorney general is fighting a leftist culture within the DOJ and FBI and asked her critics to give her a chance. Imagine if you were suddenly appointed AG or head of the FBI. You were just thrown on a ship with a hostile crew until you appoint some new crew members and figure out the ropes. You can't steer the ship effectively. It's literally impossible. Again, that is rich coming from the richest man in the world who was literally given the reins to the entire American government, and he has used it since to just enrich himself in various ways. But Laura Loomer is back, and she had another great point that she made. She tweeted, 1 week ago, Pam Bondi said, the Epstein files are on my desk. Now she's claiming the deep state set her up. What deep state? Trump is in office and all of his cabinet members are bragging about how they fired the deep state. I'm confused. I was told we fired the deep state. Those are excellent points coming from Laura Loomer. And it's interesting because it speaks directly to a lot of the cognitive dissonance that we see coming out of the right, where they say one thing and then they just don't identify it whenever it comes from Trump, right? They're mad about this thing, but whenever the Trump administration or Republicans do the thing that they're mad about, they don't see it or they don't care about it or they make excuses for it. And there are various examples of that that we're going to cover later on in this very show. Maz, what do you make of all of this? What do you think is going to come out of this? Are we ever going to see the Epstein list? And are we ever going to see Trump implicated in any of this?
Well, you're right. When you're reading a Laura Loomer tweet and you're nodding in agreement, the world is just confusing. And Portnoy also made some good points. I blame Geraldo Rivera. Because if you remember, no, you might be too young for this. I know Cenk remembers. Geraldo promised us that he was going to go into Al Capone's secret vault and find a bunch of things. And all he found was some rocks and empty bottles. That was it. He didn't find anything. And so that's what these people, it feels like the right has been waiting for the Epstein files to come out because it's going to reveal this big thing and how the deep state has been eating the blood of children and all these sexual things and all that other stuff. And I'm not saying that stuff wasn't going on with the sexual stuff that was going on with Epstein, but the right, I think, feels like it's going to take down the Clintons and the Obamas and everyone else that's been involved in getting us to where we are, this deep state. And the irony is, you look at the travel logs and the flight logs, and I think Trump even shows up in them. So then they somehow explain it away. And in my opinion, it's just amazing how passionate they are about finding Epstein's, like what's in the Epstein files. And we're in a world now where with P. Diddy and Epstein and all this other stuff. There's nothing that's gonna shock us. So there's nothing shocking. And you know what's shocking is that you guys are so stupid that you think that this is what we should be concentrating on when the guy that you voted for said he's gonna bring the price of eggs down, and he sold the presidency to the richest dude in the world, who's telling you, just like you said, Yasmin, that, it's hard. It's hard getting started here. You don't have control right away. And he's sitting there cutting all these jobs, cutting all these agencies that actually are needed in America and around the world. And they're now just obsessed with the Epstein files. I wish they would put a little more energy into maybe just reflecting upon themselves and going, wait a minute, I voted for this guy and this is what he's doing. It's like all the Palestinians that had all the Arabs that had the awakening when the Gaza video came out and he wanted to make Gaza a resort. They go, oh, I voted for that guy. Or the Venezuelan lady who was with the video where she was like, Trump is the best. And then he got rid of the temporary protection status. He's like, Trump lied to us. So I think Trump lied to us is a t-shirt that should be printed and worn by all these people. And pretty soon, everyone that voted for him will be wearing that shirt.
So I want to get into the two different issues here. One is Epstein and the other is the MAGA reaction, because I think they're both important. And one of the questions I want to address is deep state. Who's deep state? So hold that thought, because that one's important. So first on the substance of Epstein. So they released names that we already knew. And remember, those names don't necessarily mean they did it. That's just Epstein's contact list on his phone. So he has like a lot of women on that list. They didn't necessarily get massages at all, right? So my point there is that was a big giant Nothingburger. Now that leads to part of what I want to talk about with the MAGA reaction, which is that in my experience in the first term, if Trump did this, they would have been like, oh yeah, of course, the names, that's all we needed. And the fact that we don't even know anything about the names, it's beautiful. Trump is the greatest. Trump is a demigod. No one should criticize him. He got Epstein, right? That's my experience with what happened in the Trump first term, right? What's interesting is this time around, they're like, wait, that's a Nothingburger. Remember, Trump doesn't give a damn what the left thinks, right? Trump doesn't care what the mainstream media thinks. But it's his own base going, what the hell is this? You lied to us. This isn't the Epstein file. You think we're stupid? And so that leads to prediction number one. Guys, they're gonna get caught. And I don't mean caught by us. It's easy for us to rant about it, et cetera. And it's easy for us to be right, but that doesn't mean you're gonna convince the voters that you need to win the next election. Remember, he won the popular vote, right? So you've got to convince Trump voters that he's on the wrong path. And my point has been throughout, you'd be surprised. A lot of those Trump voters have a way more open mind, not all of them, maybe not even a majority of them, but a lot of them have more of an open mind than they did in his first term, partly because they're listening and watching different media. So here they are, they get tested on Epstein, a thing that right or wrong, you're right, that they care a lot about. They cared a ton about this. And so when Pam Bondi said, it's on my desk and I'm gonna give it to you, and then she gave him this nonsense and thought she could trick them, they were super pissed. Having Trump's voters super pissed at Trump is great for the country, not because, haha, we got Trump, but because it means that some of them, a lot of them, are thinking for themselves. So that's an enormous development. So prediction number one is this is just the beginning. They're gonna get caught over and over and over again, not just by us, but by their own voters. I'm gonna get to prediction number two in a second. Now, to the Epstein substance. So the names are nothing, we learned nothing from this at all. The files, she said, exist and were on her desk. Now she's trying to blame the Southern District of New York, and she said it's okay, I'm gonna go get them from the FBI. Kash Patel is in charge of the FBI, so I'm sure the biggest Trump loyalist there is, when he has the damning Epstein files, he's gonna turn it over, but he hasn't turned it over today. So what do we think is happening? Well, in order to determine that, you have to think about, well, what happened to Epstein? So number one, did he commit suicide? Well, on the Young Turks, the day that the news broke, I said on the air, guys, if the camera in the hallway of that, where he was being held in that prison, is working, then he committed suicide, as they say. Because you'll be able to see people going in and out, And if there's nobody going in or out and he was in his cell by himself, okay, suicide. I said, if the camera is magically not working, then it wasn't suicide. They definitely killed him, right? And the reason I tell you about that prediction is not, haha, yeah, I was right. No, it's to show you that I'm not Monday morning quarterbacking this. I'm on tape saying if the camera isn't working, then clearly he didn't commit suicide. And then it turned out not only was the camera not working, the two guards happened to be off at the same time. They happened to take his cellmate out of the cell right before. Come on, I mean, if you were gonna murder him, those are the first 3 steps you would do, and step number 4 is go in and murder him. So then that leads to the inexorable question, which is going to make a lot of people uncomfortable. What is a force that is powerful enough to kill someone inside a maximum security United States prison and get away with it? And have no one talk, whether it's a Biden administration or a Trump administration, about how the camera's out and the guards are off and all of these obvious things we could all see with our own eyes. Well, and then all of a sudden the files, oh golly gee, where are the files? I can't find them. What is the one force on earth that has both of our parties completely under their control? Are you sure it's our deep state that's the problem? Because our deep state's filled with a bunch of clownish bureaucrats. Okay, you guys think that there's some sort of like genius boogeyman in there. I haven't seen it yet, right? But there is another deep state from another country that is super powerful and super effective and isn't just occupying different countries, but perhaps here as well. So if somebody's got a better explanation, I'd like to hear it. But that leads to prediction number 2. They ain't gonna find those files. Those files were not on Pam Bondi's desk. They thought they could trick their own voters. Those files, all of a sudden, it will be announced that they are suddenly missing. Oh golly gee, we were gonna hand over the Epstein files, but my boss's boss is called, and it turns out there's a force we can't mess with. So you will never, ever see those files. Or they'll say, oh, they were somebody that was in the deep state, got rid of them earlier. Wink. Yeah. Okay, we'll see if I'm right. But I think that if they keep going like this, they're messing with an issue. Again, to Maz's point, an issue their base cares a lot about, and they think they could just trick them. I don't think they can. Real quick, guys, I know because we're running out of time. Look, I wrote about the same thing on Twitter. I talked about who's strong enough to do this. I don't know anyone else who is. And then Elon Musk wrote back in that comment and said, my guess is that he did, meaning he committed suicide, that Epstein committed suicide. But the suicide would have been stopped if the guards were there or the camera was functional. So it was likely assisted. He may have been promised something in exchange for killing himself. That's what I'm curious about. And I wrote back, when someone comes to assist you in killing yourself in prison, you usually didn't ask for that assistance. I said on the Young Turks when the news broke, if the camera was in the hallway where it's working, it's a suicide. If it wasn't, they killed him and it wasn't working. Part of the reason I read you that is because, and you can go look at that tweet yourself online. You'll see a lot of different comments, but it appears that the most common comment was the one graphic 13 here of people who are right-wingers, Trump fans, Elon Musk fans saying this, God, I hate agreeing with you, okay? Because they care about this and they have eyes and ears. They saw Epstein didn't commit suicide. Pam Bondi didn't have the files. They never gave them over. They've been lying the whole time, which is definitely leading them to ask, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah, I think that's somehow the more comforting aspect of this story, for me at least, is that there is a lot of unity as far as the way that people are starting to look at the world. We're starting to realize that, in this story and even in the last story, that, there are things that are binding and that are common between more people than we realize. Because you know what? It's been really exhausting the last 10 years, at least, let's say, just being so divided as a country, and especially here on the left. And I always say that one of the curses of being a progressive is that you tend to be ahead of the curve on certain things and you're just waiting for people to catch up. And I don't mean that in like an arrogant way. I'm just saying that we tend to be pushing more for things, as the name would suggest, right? So at this point, we are starting to see that a lot of people are starting to realize that a lot of the things that the Trump administration is fighting for and a lot of the things that they are actually doing isn't helping people and it isn't delivering the things that people want to them. And for whatever reason, a lot of Trump supporters really care a lot about these Epstein files. They want to see them. They want to see all the Democrats that they can implicate with the files so they can feel justified and say, look, see, I told you this is what's going to happen. I told you all the Democrats were evil. I told you they were all doing things that they weren't supposed to be doing. They want that moment for themselves. They've waited years for that kind of a release, and they're getting antsy and they want it. They were promised it, and they're not going to get it. And I feel bad for them, but I feel like that's a wake-up call that they need to experience. And of course, whatever Republicans happen to be on that list as well, they're just going to say, oh no, they were just there investigating. They were just trying to stop all the bad stuff from happening. Whatever it is that they need to tell themselves to make themselves feel better and to make themselves feel as if they're on the right side of things. Personally, I kind of don't care about the list, right? I don't think that a whole lot is going to come from it. I don't think that once all these names get released, we're going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe this person was on the list. I don't think that anything meaningful is going to come from it. I would love to know more about Jeffrey Epstein and his death and who was behind it and all these things, what he was hiding. Like, that story is interesting and valid to me. But again, with the Trump administration currently in power, I'm a little nervous about, like, maybe if all this stuff does get released, what is going to come from it? I'm not sure. Maybe something if we're being optimistic, but at this point, I really just can't see it.
All right, we got to take a break here. I'm going to read more of your comments during the break. And when we come back, the out and out corruption has begun, where they're now just canceling contracts and giving them to Elon Musk. It's unbelievable. So we'll have that to you when we return. All right, back on TYT during the break here. So let's go to Super Chat first. And Guns We Trust said, I don't want my tax dollars going to either Israel or Ukraine, Cenk. I love your stuff with Dave Smith on Israel. I'm MAGA, but I love your channel because I like hearing both sides of topics. Thank you, brother. Really appreciate it. Dave Smith is fantastic on Israel. Everybody check him out on that. And by the way, I have a lot of disagreements with Dave Smith, but what I love is this new world where we're allowed to agree and disagree and still have conversations without hating each other. At least some of us are in that new world, and a lot of folks aren't. If you say, hey, I don't want my tax dollars going to Ukraine, I hear you. That's at least a legitimate point, but we all want to get to peace. And so if you said to me, hey, let's spend a little bit more money so we can get a good peace deal for Ukraine and then get out, I'd love that the most. So, but let's have real conversations based on facts and reality, and that seems like that's what you want as well, so I love that. Liz Smith writes in, I'm going to have to disagree here, Cenk. Vance addressed Zelenskyy first, and he answered with the question you mentioned. Liz, I hear you. I looked at it super carefully, and I know there was a back and forth, but it's Vance addressed the report, said something that Zelenskyy didn't like about Zelenskyy in Ukraine to the reporter. Then Zelenskyy came and asked Vance, which is unusual. And it really put Vance back. Look, guys, I think they were going to blow it up either way, right? And Vance couldn't wait to attack him. So I'm just giving it to you as I saw that exchange, and you could watch it with your own eyes. It's very prominent. We showed it to you earlier. You can see it again and make your own judgment call. Unleash Brian says, there's nothing wrong with asking a question. Don't blame Zelenskyy for starting this public berating of him. This seems planned and staged by Vance and Trump. Zelenskyy stood his ground for his country, and good for him. He did stand his ground for his country, especially on the mineral rights. I'm not begrudging that at all, but he came in hot, guys. He did. I mean, he didn't yell at him. He wasn't rude, but he was clearly challenging Vance in a way that when I first watched it, I was surprised by. Before the blow up even happened, I was like, whoa, look at Zelenskyy coming in a little hot, right? And then JD Vance came in nuclear. So that's how I saw it, but again, everybody's seeing it a little bit differently. JT Drum Shop in YouTube member section said, TYT always delivers the best news, period. Anna and Yaz are some of the very best journalists. I love hearing that, thank you for saying that. Susan Cosentini, who just joined, and when you join, you're part of the show, and she is now, says, thank you, Cenk, for telling the truth, admitting when you are wrong, and believing that compassion and justice will prevail. Thank you so much for saying that, Susan, and I don't have any problem admitting when I'm wrong. I don't want to stay wrong. I want to get to the right position. Darth Dunedin wrote in, Cenk, I find you first on Piers Morgan, who I've been watching for almost 4 years. At first, I thought you were out there sometimes, but as I kept watching you, especially the past year, I have a ton of respect for you. I agree with you on most things, and I like that you and Anna call out both sides. Thanks for providing real, honest news. I watch you guys every day since 2024. Well, you're wonderful for saying that, and guys, and these are great comments, and I appreciate you guys. Most important thing is, let's have one place where we're all honest and actually have real conversations with each other. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Yaz, and Maz. Make sure you're checking Yaz and Maz out on Rebel Headquarters, which is another TYT channel on YouTube. All right, yes.
All right, last story. Let's roll the tape.
This is as flagrant as conflicts of interest get. You're talking about Elon Musk, who now works for the federal government in some capacity, recommending that the federal government give a $2 billion contract to a private company that he owns.
All right, so yesterday, CNN senior legal analyst Elie Honig spoke out against Elon Musk and his push to have the Federal Aviation Administration, or the FAA, scrap a $2.4 billion contract with Verizon. Cenk, do you have any idea who might get that contract instead?
Just coincidentally, total coincidence, it might be Starlink owned by Tesla. But now the right wing thinks, oh no, he's gonna do it for free. Well, I got bad news for you on that front in a little bit.
Okay, yeah, so you're absolutely right. It's looking like Starlink is going to get that $2.4 billion contract instead of Verizon. So in 2023, Verizon was awarded this $2.4 billion contract by the federal government. And under that contract, Verizon would replace an aging technology called the FAA Enterprise Network Services Program, or FENS. FENS is what the FAA and air traffic control offices use to communicate with each other. And outside reviews have concluded that FENS is indeed in desperate need of repair and updates. And so this is where Elon Musk comes in, because he is nothing if not an opportunist, all in the name of making things great for America again. The Washington Post reports that there are already SpaceX employees who work for or inside the FAA, and they have decided that Starlink should get Verizon's contract. This is reporting from the Washington Post, says the FAA was scheduled to make a final decision on whether to start paying Verizon for the contract next month, said one of two people briefed on the plans who spoke on the condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to speak publicly. But instead, Musk's team determined the job should go to Starlink, the person said. Several senior FAA officials have refused to sign paperwork authorizing the switch, according to the person who has been briefed on the internal deliberations and resulting fallout. So Musk's team is now seeking help from the acting administrator of the agency, Trump appointee Chris Rocheleau, the transportation secretary, Sean P. Duffy. So in fact, the FAA has already started using Starlink. Surprise, surprise. This is from CNN. Says earlier this week, the FAA confirmed that it is testing 3 Starlink terminals. Musk said those terminals were sent to the FAA at no cost to the agency or taxpayers at this time. And he added that the shipment of terminals was done on an emergency basis to restore air traffic control connectivity. Okay, so Musk has now spoken out about this whole situation on X, his own social media platform. Earlier this week, this is what he posted. He said the Verizon system is not working, and so is putting air travelers at serious risk. And then he doubled down later by writing yesterday, to be clear here, the Verizon communication system to air traffic control is breaking down very rapidly. The FAA assessment is single-digit months to catastrophic failure, putting air traveler safety at serious risk. And then Musk issued a correction to those posts, writing this: correction, the ancient system that is rapidly declining in capability was made L3 Harris. The new system that is not yet operational is from Verizon. So this story is crazy. As Cenk was teasing earlier in the show, this is all about corruption. This is all about streamlining. And this is almost like Elon Musk is really, I referred to him in one of my Rebel HQ videos as Pinky and the Brain are running the country, Trump and Elon Musk. Elon Musk is trying to take over the world, right? Every day he wakes up and he's like, what am I gonna do today? Try to take over the world. He wants everything underneath him, under his umbrella of influence, right? This is the FAA. And this is the thing that we've seen happening several times, especially with this administration, but it happens throughout, just the history of government. They say, look, this is something that's bad. They don't do anything to help it get better. Even in the case where this administration is the one that's in charge, they're saying, look, the government can't handle this type of responsibility. The government isn't equipped to deal with something like this. Again, even though the government is in charge, it's the Trump administration. So what they do is they just let it get worse and worse and worse. Then it becomes a PR nightmare. And then people say, look how bad it is. We don't want that. We have to go private. Let's just give it to Elon Musk. So now Elon Musk is just like racking up all these government contracts. I don't know. Cenk, what do you have to say about this?
Okay, so let's break this down. So Musk says, I investigated it, I'm Doge expert here, and I came in and I realized the problem with the FAA is my competitor. I mean, Verizon. Verizon is a giant problem. They shouldn't have that $2.4 billion contract. 2 minutes later, fine, it's not Verizon, I made that up. Or I'm such an expert, but I didn't know that Verizon didn't have the old contract, they have the new contract. Boy, that gives me a lot of confidence that you know what's going on. So conveniently, you attack the people with the new contract and then had to walk it back later and say, oops, it wasn't them. So Verizon hasn't done anything wrong. In fact, that contract was signed in 2023. They were about to start, these things take forever, right? So now if we stop that contract, which is what the FAA is considering doing right now as we speak, then it'll take a long time for Starlink to get in. Even if they went with Starlink and even if Starlink was better, you're gonna delay it a lot. Now that gets to the second point. How do you know Starlink is better? So when I talk about this online, there's a bunch of right-wingers who are like, oh no, of course, Verizon's terrible. How do you know how good Verizon's communication system is in regards to the FAA? Did you analyze that? Like, where's that assumption coming from? And then they say Starlink is better. Oh, come on, how do you know Starlink is better than Verizon? Are you an expert in federal aviation? That's absurd, that's insane. So, and by the way, guys, I've said this many times on the show, Starlink is an amazing company. So I got no beef with Starlink, and they've got contracts with the government. I don't begrudge them that, etc. But now you're gonna tell me that without even looking at what they're doing, because Elon didn't even know which company it was. He comes in and goes, it's wrong, cancel that 2.4 billion contract. And his team just conveniently says, give it to Elon's company. Nah, that's not just, conflict of interest doesn't do that justice. That's out and out corruption. Even if somehow they miraculously proved overnight to the FAA that they were wrong about this 2-year process where they picked this company, and they convinced them in one day or a couple of days that Starlink is better, and they should go junk this entire process, junk all the money they already spent on it, which by the way, isn't cost savings at all. It actually adds costs, but just switch it over to Elon Musk company. Guys, I still would say no. That's insane, that's insane. That's like me going into a Bernie Sanders administration and going, oh, they have a contract with CNN that's for $2 billion. No, CNN is terrible, I'm canceling. I mean, CNN might be terrible, but I'm canceling and giving it to TYT. Everyone would normally have the reaction of like, really? And you decided that as soon as you came in, that was the right thing to do. And then he throws this thing out there, like I already gave Starlink for free. And then you look at right wing on social media. He's doing it for free, he's doing it for free. No, he's not, guys. It's a trick. He's letting them test Starlink for free. If I was gonna get a $2 billion contract, I'd let you test things too for free. Of course. They're gonna just transfer the money to Elon Musk. Why? return on investment. The brother spent $270 million on Donald Trump's campaign, so he wants his investment returned, and getting a $2.4 billion contract, let alone all the other things they're about to do. That alone would pay for his investment in bribing, contributing to Donald Trump. Maz.
Yeah, I think it's time for MAGA to realize that Trump is making Elon great again. It's mega. Because he, to your point, he paid that money. I believe that was either actually said or it was implied when Elon was saying, hey, I can put this $270 million into your campaign, and if you win, you will avoid going to prison. And I think that probably played out somehow, and it's now at this point where, Donald Trump's mind is going, well, you're going to profit, we're all profiting. He didn't divest himself. He was making money from his hotels in this first presidency. And Elon, if he were to do this right, he would either have to get out of Doge and say, I'm not involved with the government, and now I want to, try and challenge Verizon and show you why we're better, and then get the contract, or divest from Starlink and be a government person. But he is not doing that. He is just sitting here right in front of our eyes, just bribing his way through stuff, making profits. And I really don't understand why MAGA has not rebelled against this. Because once again, the promise was day one, your life is gonna get better, things are gonna get cheaper, inflation is gonna go down, and it's the opposite. We just saw that consumer confidence has dropped, the stock market has been dropping, and egg prices have been rising, other prices have been rising, inflation has gotten worse. So at what point do these people not realize that the grift is on? The grift is on. It's been on from day one, because that's who they voted for, a grifter. And now he's just found all these other grifters, and you got all these tech bros, and we got an oligarchy, and they're just running roughshod all over this. And it's not even that they're doing it as much as it's what you were saying, these right-wing people that just keep defending the guy. I go, why do you keep defending the guy? Are you like, is he your brother? Is he your uncle? Is he your grandfather? No, they just can't admit that they're wrong in handing the country over to these thieves, and that's where we're at. So.
Well, Maz, not just is the stock market down, but Elon Musk, his own Tesla stocks are down pretty significantly. I don't know if that is an indicator that something good it might be happening, at least with consumer confidence in him and his companies, that he really isn't running right now. We actually did see some evidence of that in David Portnoy's tweet from the other story that we covered earlier on the show. But to answer your question, Maz, I think one of the reasons why people just let him do things like this is because of his branding, right? His whole brand is that he is an American genius. He is an American innovator, even though he's not American at all. And people really need to believe that there are people out there in the world who are rich and powerful and are looking out for them, right? And anything that somebody like Elon Musk or even Donald Trump does that they don't really understand, they say, you know what, they're smarter than me because they have more money than me. And they must know something that I don't. They must know what they're doing and I don't get it. But eventually, all this good stuff that they're doing is going to trickle down all the way to me and my family. And I'm going to feel happy and satisfied and safe here in the United States of America like I'm supposed to feel. And they're just waiting to feel better. And they're putting all of their energy into these people who are not looking out for them at all. And I fear that they are going to be very disappointed eventually if it's a big if they ever realize that they were duped by these people.
Okay, last things here, guys. Just so you know, Elie or Elie Honig on CNN is correct. When you give yourself a government contract when you're inside the government, that is illegal. That's not just, that was a slight violation of etiquette. In 2020 and 2021, 10 such prosecutions, 2020, 12 prosecutions, 2019, 13 prosecutions. So this is a thing that you can go to prison for. Now they're just doing it out in the open. So, but will there be any consequences? Well, the people who usually check in on that are the inspector generals. The only problem is the very first thing they did when the Trump team got in charge was they fired all the inspector generals. The people who would be the only ones who could watch the watchers. They got rid of them first. Not a good sign, not at all a good sign. By the way, Elon is a US citizen, but the rest of it holds. All right, when we come back, Joe Biden's team admits they were gaslighting the country. That's a hell of a story. Then Bill Burr versus Ben Shapiro. So a lot more to come. Make sure you're checking out Yasmin Khan and Maz Jobrani on Rebel Headquarters. And check out Maz's comedy, mazjobrani.com, right?
Yes, I'm on tour. People can find me on tour at mazjobrani.com.
Yeah, love it. All right, and Modern Context podcast for Yaz as well. All right, guys, much love. We'll see you in a minute. Our audience has given us everything, so we couldn't be more connected. When we first started, people would start giving us directions and say, okay, the mics are too large, move them. Turn them into lav mics. I mean, they were incredible. And then one guy walked in and gave us a really expensive switcher and said, you guys need this, and walked out. Okay, it's amazing. They helped us build a studio. They did a $2 million funding campaign for us. And so they really are us. We do this show together to the point where some of our hosts are even former listeners. So when we say that the audience is part of TYT, we really mean it.
I think what the audience also appreciates is especially if they're members, they really get an inside look into who we are, our personal lives, what drives and motivates us. It goes beyond just storytelling. I think that what we do is allow our viewers and our listeners into our daily lives, and we give them kind of like this inside look into everything that we're passionate about and why it is that we're doing what we're doing, right? Like the motivation behind what we're doing, I think is important for our audience to know, and we're not shy about sharing that with them. And it's different from what people typically see in legacy media outlets where everything is kind of dry and robotic and there's really no personality or authenticity that comes along with it. Oftentimes when we're doing the show, I don't really think of it as me telling them stories. I think of it as us having a mutual respect and conversation with one another. And as I said earlier, I mean, not only do I feel that through the work I do, I'm informing our audience, but they inform me oftentimes as well. You know, they'll pitch stories to us. They'll tell us, you know, a certain perspective or angle to a story that we might have missed. And I love it.
You're about to watch some behind the scenes footage of the Young Turks. Ooh. Now these are partial videos. If you want to get all of them, you become a member, go to tyt.com/join, and you'll get all the behind the scenes of me, Anna, John, JR, a little bit reality show like, tyt.com/join, and enjoy this. You know what you're seeing behind me? Jersey, hold. Watch me flip this camera. However I flip it. Do I flip it like this? No, I just took a picture. I'm bitzing right now.
What?
Behind the scenes.
Oh, okay. For members? I don't have my face on.
She doesn't have her face on, folks. Oh, that's JR's ass right there.
You can't take 5 minutes off, can you?
No, I can't, Johnny Pie. I said it was live stream, but I was lying. It's not a live stream. It's just for members. Bitsy, this is my cat. You know what his name is? Kiki Cat.
Animals are innocent.
Control room and the insanity is obviously there.
Right now, as you can see, I'm directing or tech directing. I'm so happy to be here.
This is what like a Labor Day beard looks like for Cenk. Man, you're a Young Turks viewer if you recognize me like this.
Oh, thank you. You are the one person in my life I would love to meet.
What's going on, guys? This is a Bitsy or a BTS or behind the scenes with Hassan Piker, AKA Woke Bay.
Oh, hi, I didn't see you there.
I have finished my show, The Damage Report, and now I get into a really awkward time of the day.
When I'm sitting, the control room is right there. So I can see Bart.
This is the Pittsburgh office, by the way. I refer to often as the boiler room.
You see how it's ripped? Is it super unprofessional to wear that at a business meeting? Or am I like cool rebel?
I just finished doing the power panel and I'm fired up.
What do you do for TYT? Not a whole lot.
If you're frantically tweeting at us that something's broken, thank you, because I'm fixing it.
And thank you for being a TYT member.
Super last thing, because there's always got to be a super last thing. Oh, that was disastrous. This has been behind the scenes, behind the scenes. All right, back on the Young Turks. New power panel for you guys. Cenk Uygur, Jordan Uhl, Ramesh Srinivasan. Ramesh speaks. Well, he does speak at UCLA as well, but that's because he's teaching there. He's a professor there. Utopia's podcast. Jordan's on Rebel Headquarters. Everybody check out all that. All right, we've got huge stories for you guys in this hour. Biden's team admits they were gaslighting. Bill Burr versus Ben Shapiro. I love it. Jordan, take it away.
A day after dropping multiple big cases against big banks and fintech companies, the Trump administration is now moving to completely shut down the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's Trump-appointed leadership plans to fire nearly all of its 1,700 employees while winding down the agency, according to testimony from employees. In a trove of statements released late Thursday, federal employees said that the mass layoff was discussed in meetings they attended this month with senior CFPB leaders and members of Elon Musk's so-called Department of Government Efficiency. Through its relatively brief history, the CFPB helped 195 million Americans who were eligible for over 19.7 billion in relief through monetary compensation, principal reductions, canceled debts, and other consumer relief. The Bureau took on junk fees on ticket purchases, high interest rates, and overdraft fees from big banks, fintech startups that were screwing customers, student loan servicers who were using illegal debt collection tactics, and much more. And now, if the Trump administration proceeds, it's open season for corporations. An anonymous source described the plan to gut the agency to CNBC. My team was directed to assist with terminating the vast majority of CFPB employees as quickly as possible, said an employee identified as Alex Doe, a pseudonym used out of fear of retaliation. Doe said the plan from CFPB leaders and Doge was to cut the Bureau's workforce in 3 phases. It would first eliminate probationary and term employees, then carry out a wave of about 1,200 layoffs, leaving a skeleton crew of a few hundred workers. Finally, the Bureau would reduce altogether within 60 to 90 days by terminating most of its remaining staff. But this also presents a conflict of interest for Elon Musk. In January, Musk's ex announced it had forged a deal with Visa to incorporate mobile payments on his social media platform. This service would be directly regulated by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau under expanded oversight powers it had finalized late last year, allowing the agency to police things like privacy issues, fraud, and how disputed transactions are handled at mobile payment apps like Apple Pay, Google Wallet, PayPal, Cash App, and X's money service. Cenk, I thought Trump was going to help the little guy. What's going on here?
That's a good one. Okay, so look, guys, for Trump's followers, they think that that's not a joke, right? They think, oh, he's going to bring down prices. Has that happened yet? No, it hasn't happened yet. And that he was going to look out for us and get to peace deals. Has that happened yet? It didn't look like we're getting to a peace deal in Ukraine from what happened earlier today, etc. But one thing that they said definitely wasn't going to happen was Project 2025. So that's what Trump said clearly, and by the way, some portions of MAGA said that they were against Project 2025. If you're curious why, by the way, because it came out of the Heritage Foundation, and the guy who wrote it was Russell Vaughn. And the Heritage Foundation is not a populist think tank, it's a corporate think tank. And it has come up with all sorts of corporate policies, always in favor of tax cuts for corporations, deregulation for corporations, tax cuts for the wealthy, etc. By the way, let's be honest, it also came up with Obamacare. The Affordable Care Act was originally hatched at the Heritage Foundation. It was a right-wing plan that Mitt Romney then instituted in Massachusetts and then Obama instituted in the White House. Hey, look at that, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Anyways, so these corporate guys, we were assured, are not going to go into the administration. Except they did. Russell Vaughn is in an enormously important position at OMB where he gets to basically, along with Elon Musk, control the budget. And guess what he's doing? Exactly what they outlined in Project 2025 at the Heritage Foundation. Again, not a populist plan, a corporate plan. So what are some of the things that they've done? First thing they did was fire all the inspector generals, because Doge, they claim, is the watchdog, right? It's gonna come in, figure out what to cut, what's the waste, fraud, and abuse. But any smart person asks, yes, but who watches the watchers? Well, the inspector generals would watch. Oops, they fired them first. So then you get into the different cuts they've been making. Did they cut trillions of dollars like they promised? Nope. Did they cut the defense budget as they promised? No, actually, this week they announced their budget, and everything else is squirrels, distractions, squirrel, 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 to get your attention. The budget is what matters because money talks. It's all about the money. That's your actual action, right? So what was their action plan for the Pentagon? Add $100 billion. What happened to cutting? Now we're adding $100 billion. And Hexas says, no, we're gonna realign 50 billion of the, I guess, the extra. The other 50 extra billion doesn't get assigned, but we're gonna reassign 50 billion. Well, how's that a cut? That's not a cut. And see, I'll tell you ahead of time. And if you're in the right wing, you say, oh, no way, boo, you lefties, I don't believe you. And then go check, see what happens later. My guess is that a lot of that money is going to be reassigned to Palantir, run by Peter Thiel, who single-handedly created JD Vance's career by giving him about $15 million in campaign donations, and to Starlink and SpaceX, owned by Elon Musk. So no cuts at all, they added the Pentagon. I give you all that because then the next step was the so-called big cuts, which are actually tiny. We're gonna cut all the agents, not all, but a lot of the agents at the IRS that are auditing the rich. But wait, that doesn't save money. You get back at a bare minimum, the government gets back $6 for every dollar that it spends on auditors. So wait, you just cost us 6x over at the IRS, but the rich are protected, so don't worry. How is this populist? Have we gotten to populism yet? So then they go around cutting all these different departments that are what? Watchdogs of Wall Street and cryptocurrency. In fact, at the SEC, they move all the crypto guys away from crypto and into another area. And then now they've been doing crypto deals. We'll talk more about that in today's show and other shows. And then now you go to the CFPB that has gotten American consumers, undoubtedly, no one doubts this. It's not even close. It's a stone cold fact. And in fact, even some right-wing populists are like, but it's true. They got us back $20 billion. Again, if you cut the CFPB, we don't save money. We lose money. Consumers are gonna lose potentially another $20 billion. And where does that money go? CFPB is strictly to make sure that the banks are not ripping you off. Now they won't exist, and the banks are free to rip you off all they like. So this ain't populism. This is a corporate takeover of our government. And if you're pissed about Joe Biden's donors and the Democratic donors, you are 100% right. And now, if you think your donors are the good guys as they funnel all this money to themselves and end all the investigations of themselves and take away anyone who would protect you inside the US government, well, you got another thought coming to you. The donors on both sides are not interested in helping you. They're interested in helping themselves. Ramesh.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, the Trump campaign was a rhetorical smokescreen, yet it articulated grievances without actually any solutions to any of those grievances because this administration is anti-worker, anti-consumer, anti-diversity on any level, of course, and pro-oligarchy. And that's very, very clear in the actions that this administration has taken. And this is actually really a statement about how politics and political messaging can overcome actual policy that makes a difference, right? Because if you look at the Biden administration, there was no coherent messaging whatsoever in relation to the actual good parts of the administration, which were Rohit Chopra and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, Federal Trade Commission and Lena Khan, National Labor Relations Board. These were strong parts of the previous administration, yet somehow incoherently communicated as something that actually helped American people. And that's because, quite honestly, and you both have been talking about this forever. There's an incoherence between messaging in relation to what your donors want and what your now eroded and possibly dead base wants as well. So this gets to, I think, the big political issues, which is where is the coherent, charismatic response to this administration's brutality and assaults, full-on assaults on all of us. It's overwhelming, it's designed to be overwhelming, it's disorienting. We'll probably talk about this later, but I have my own ways of trying to deal with catharsis in all of this. But we know very clearly on many different levels, any cuts would be austerity measures that will attack and harm the most vulnerable of all of us, including many Trump supporters. So this was a smokescreen that has been pulled over many of our eyes, and a smokescreen is better than, not better, but is at least more coherent than an administration that had no coherence and had no ability to communicate whatsoever. And I'm talking about the Biden administration there. And so that's what we're facing here. And so forget about Biden now. Now it's time to figure out how we charismatically and coherently fight back.
Yep. Your point about the lack of a coherent message is a strong one. And I think Democrats need to take a look in the mirror and think about how you want to message going into midterms, because Trump and his administration are giving you a gift on a silver platter. You can now go out and campaign on Trump. His actions are directly resulting in higher interest rates, higher overdraft fees, higher late fees, higher junk fees on airline tickets, higher fees on concert tickets. You have huge tours coming up this year. You can tie it to these things like the Oasis tour or the Sabrina Carpenter tour. These are gonna be major relevant pop culture events that you can tie your political messaging to, that people can see the direct impact of Trump's actions to their wallets. It would require them to take on Wall Street and corporations and special interests. Many of them, those C-suite executives or CEOs or investors, are donors to their campaigns. This is an opportunity to chart a totally new course for Democrats going into the next decade and beyond. If you are willing to challenge power, you can use this directly right now. As Cenk said, they're not doing anything about prices, and they don't plan to. The Pepsi CEO is saying on CNBC, people are used to higher prices. Use that to your advantage.
Yeah, and may I just add one thing, which is the Democrats have done such a poor job. Certainly since this administration has took over, it's been flat out embarrassing, and it's been heartbreaking for me. But on top of it, they're doing such a poor job even articulating people's grievances. Look how poorly that was done during the Kamala Harris campaign. There's no problem, everything's just fine. I'm not gonna change anything from Biden. People are existentially angry about economic populist issues. And so Trump had some articulation around grievance, but Trump has repeatedly conflated economic health with stock market valuation. He can't help but do this. Who is going to expose him on this? Because it's obvious in actions, but even his own words about his economic proposals, that he's going to do nothing for 99% of us.
Yeah, last quick thing I'll add is there needs to be a different wing of the Democratic Party, which, let's see what happens. But this current establishment wing of the Democratic Party is never going to challenge him on any of these things effectively, because they have very similar donors. And Obama didn't want to establish the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Elizabeth Warren publicly embarrassed them until he did. And by the way, you should give Elizabeth Warren an enormous amount of credit for that. And I always have, and that's why I was much more supportive of her than other progressives in 2020, because I know that she got this through, and she had to take on other Democrats to do it. So her wing of the party, her, Bernie, whoever else might be the populists, they are the ones who have to be ascendant. Because if you listen to the Schumers and the Jeffries and those guys, they're never going to fight back effectively because they believe in the donor class and not their voters. That's the problem. And so, all right, we got to take a break here. When we come back, one of Biden's top team members says, yeah, we were gaslighting the crap out of you guys. So that is an amazing admission. Don't miss it. let's go to member comments. Let's go to tyt.com first. Rosa M. Diaz says, I see a big recession coming soon from all these layoffs because the dominoes push the other ones down. Rosa, I read that because I really agree with you. I mean, I don't know if it's a recession. I don't know exactly what form it's going to take, but I do know this, like there's a reckoning coming because you can't keep doing things wrong and then expect things not to break. And when things start breaking, that's when people are going to be super angry. So they're poking the bear. They think that it's okay, we'll just lie to our own base and then they're suckers and they'll buy it. And I know some of us on the left think that. I don't. I think when things break, people will notice. So let's see what happens. And I hope we're wrong and that they don't break, but it's a near certainty. Lou B says the only thing that can save Bondi now is if she releases the full UFO files. By the way, look, I don't think they did this as a distraction. I think it was real and I think it was over the mineral rights. But everybody's now talking about Zelenskyy, Ukraine, etc. And conveniently push the Epstein files out of the news, right? And they're never gonna give you those Epstein files. They were totally, you want to talk about getting caught, okay? So they say, oh yeah, here's the files, here's a couple of names. And MAGA's like, no, they're not the files at all, you're totally lying. That wouldn't have happened in the past. It happened here and they're not happy with it. So Wang Jun says the Epstein files will be released at the same time as Trump's tax returns and healthcare plans. So in about 2 weeks. That's what he's been saying for a long time. Always funny. All right, Joseph Yakim writes in, I don't see Trump talking like this, referring to Zelenskyy. I don't see Trump talking like this to Israel. That's because Netanyahu has Trump and the American government by the, thanks to Epstein, Israeli Mossad agent. His opinion, I didn't say anything, okay? But is Israel really powerful enough to make sure that doesn't get out under a Republican and Democratic administration? Oh yeah. Is anyone else powerful enough to do that? Norway? Taiwan? IBM? I don't know. Just asking questions. All right, Wang wrote in again, no matter what your view is on this matter, that was absolutely embarrassing, disgusting behavior from Trump and Vance. These two clans tried to be tough, but all they did was get the entire world to side with Zelenskyy and Ukraine. And that might be a silver lining, and Europe's got to step up more to protect Ukraine. On Twitch, Galfar71 said Pam Bondi won the TYT Discord weekly poll a few minutes ago for who's the worst Trump cabinet appointee. Part 2. So congratulations, Pam. And by the way, we might have gotten MAGA votes on that one. Okay, so hang in there. Killer writes, and you know I love Cenk, but he's so naive with this notion. They're gonna get caught, please. They're gonna get caught as another version of tick, 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 tick. So Killer, we're all gonna see with our own eyes. I say the same thing to MAGA that I'm saying to you. We'll see, we'll all see it and we'll bring you the facts either way. But on tick, 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 you're totally right. I was wrong about that. And to the tune of $400 I had to pay Anna. Okay, but every time you're wrong, you got to learn lessons. What did you get wrong? Why did you get it wrong? So you can get it right in the future. All right, we'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Jordan, and Ramesh with you guys, but also John Hartman, who just hit the join button and became an American hero and part of the TYT community. And Torjo Dragon, thanks for gifting 10 memberships on YouTube. You're amazing. All right, Jordan.
Take a look at this.
On Wednesday, I was holding a seminar with a former Biden White House official, Michael LaRosa. Well, he admitted something that I had never heard someone from the Biden administration say out loud.
Cover up, to me, is a little hard, a little harsh. We were always, from day one, cognizant that age was an issue.
Would you say it was solved?
There are some things that are true. I mean, like the gaslighting, there was a lot of denial of the polling. And I will use the term gaslight because that's what they were doing, the campaign, former colleagues.
That was Jill Biden's ex-press secretary and White House insider Michael LaRosa admitting that the Biden campaign was gaslighting the public with its constant denials that Joe Biden's mental abilities were declining. Now, Cenk, this may come as a surprise to you, but are you shocked to learn that Biden wasn't, in fact, young and dynamic and sharp behind the scenes?
Oh my God, really?
Yeah, first time we're hearing it.
Guys, the important part of this story, as we'll show you some of the tape here, is that they're finally admitting it. And so, I mean, I don't know anyone who was more gaslit on that issue than I was, because I was like, he's old, he's not going to win. They're like, oh, you're crazy, you're totally nuts, right? So I'll get to that reaction in a second as well. And to me, guys, and we'll talk about this too, will the Democratic voters ever learn a lesson? So please, everybody, listen to what he's saying about how they lied to you and they knew they were lying to you.
Well, at the seminar, which was hosted by Puck journalist Tara Palmieri, LaRosa also admitted that Biden's team was terrified of letting him do media appearances. Take a look.
The president's team was scared to death of impromptu, unscripted, unrehearsed, unpracticed, unchoreographed, anything. They couldn't compete for the attention economy. They just couldn't do it. They didn't have any idea. And they didn't have the vessel. Either Biden, by the way, who would have done anything. He loves TV. He loves doing stuff. It was the orbit that did not trust their own candidate.
But despite not trusting Biden and their own candidates to be able to speak to the media, LaRosa also revealed that from day one, there was no question that Joe Biden would run again. Take a look.
Were you concerned about him running for re-election in 2024?
Yes, and I'll say this. When I got to the White House on day one, it became pretty clear to me. You know, I think I went in, first of all, I was just happy to be there, excited. I used to drive my boss home every night, my chief of staff, because we lived in the same building. And I remember him saying something about, oh, well, that's after the re-elect. That's a second term thing. I said, wait, what? Because I think
you believe the bridge.
I think, well, it wasn't that I believed the bridge. It was just that I just assumed that this was going to be like, okay, we're going to pass the torch to another generation of Democrats and let them handle a Trump 2.0 campaign. But I was, you know, brought to reality pretty fast. Like,
but why not?
Why wouldn't he run?
Yeah, why not?
It was why wouldn't he?
Now, on top of just insisting Biden was the only candidate who can beat Trump and he was the best person to run, he also admitted that they just totally denied polling. Take a look.
The message to everybody was to make sure that you tell people it's too early. It's too early. These polls don't mean anything. Well, it became too early, and these polls don't mean anything for about a year and a half. The polls, so the numbers never moved. By denying the data that was out there publicly, by denying the really insightful journalism that, you know, they were actually demeaning a lot of the people, but it was the data denial that really bothered me, because we loved polling when we were running,
right?
Because we were always ahead. All of a sudden, because they're always behind, the polls are meaningless, and we're attacking the New York Times. They did do a lot of gaslighting of people, and I think if you were watching MSNBC, you probably believed them, and were probably pretty shocked. But if you were consuming information, consuming data, and looking at it objectively, and trying to interpret it and process it objectively, then none of it was surprising.
I mean, this is ridiculous. None of it's surprising. But Cenk, what do you make of more and more Biden staffers and White House staffers coming out and being like, well, actually, yeah, he wasn't all there?
Yeah, I'm furious. I'm not at all surprised. And anybody who watched the Young Turks regularly, everything he just said is what we told you ahead of time. And when we said it, what happened? Mainstream media was like, how dare you? And let's be honest, a lot of Democratic voters were like, you're hurting the cause. We think you're trying to help Trump. And I kept saying 1,000 times over, guys, anyone who knows politics knows they're going to lose. Backing Biden is helping Trump. because it's a guaranteed loss. And now they're saying, oh yeah, we knew he was gonna lose. We knew he was a mess. We knew he couldn't do a single interview. We all knew, but me. But back then, when we were saying it, we were the enemy. No, the truth is never the enemy. So just stop demanding that your media sources lie to you. It doesn't help, it hurts. You have to be honest with yourself before you can move forward. We could have had a great candidate. We could have beaten Donald Trump. And instead, we went with this addled old fool, and he's sickeningly corrupt inner team. Never trust a Democratic leader. These guys, these establishment guys, I'm not saying never trust a Democratic politician, although beware of 90% of them, okay? But in terms of leadership, the ones who say, no, donor money, they're the ones that have corrupted this party and ruined this party. Look at all the admissions. I'll go as quickly as I can. You saw him say all of these things. They were scared of having Biden do interviews. Remember when I said he's not doing the Super Bowl interview? The Super Bowl interview is the layup. That's a softball and the biggest audience. And that's when so many people who are savvy about politics switched over. Axelrod, Carville, Ezra Klein, Nate Silver. They're like, they're not doing the Super Bowl interview. That means they're surrendering. They're not even going to try to win this. Second admission, we knew we were getting killed in the attention economy. So they know they had to do the interviews, but they couldn't put Joe Biden out there. Why? Because they knew that he had dementia. They knew that his brain was not functioning. But they're like, it doesn't matter, our jobs are on the line. Me. I'm gonna get paid. I'm gonna be the star who got this addled old fool elected. And then as soon as he's elected, we'll do 25th Amendment and put in the next corporate robot. It doesn't matter, me. They didn't just betray the country. They betrayed you, the Democratic voters. They betrayed you more than anyone else has ever betrayed you. They knew they were gonna lose. So then, he says, his advisor, Biden wanted to go on because he's senile, he doesn't know what he's doing, but his advisors wouldn't let him go on. Why wouldn't they let him go on? Because they know with great certainty that he's senile. And every single time, not only do they lie when they go on air, and go, oh no, he's young and dynamic. You should see him behind the scenes. Meanwhile, they go off camera and they're like, don't let him on the scenes. He's even worse behind the scenes. We just all lied to everyone. They're the most grotesque liars. Okay, he says always lying about passing the torch. Oh, we said we were gonna pass the torch. No way, Joe Biden's a giant egomaniac. Everyone who works around him wants to keep working at the White House, wants to keep getting paid, wants to keep having power. So they were never gonna pass the torch. They were lying from day one. And then I don't want you to miss something he said that seems small but is big. He said, oh, my boss told me that's a second term issue, Now they told you they were gonna pass all their priorities and that Joe Biden cared so much about those policies. Meanwhile, internally, they're going, we're not gonna do any of those things. If we get a second term with the guy we all know is senile, then we might do them in the second term, but we're lying to our voters. We never intended to do any of these policies. Told you. Then the polls. I said over and over again, guys, look at the polls. They might be off by 1 or 2, max 4 points, but he's in the 30s. No one in the 30s has ever won as an incumbent, ever. And they knew that, and they were like, no, it doesn't matter. Okay, when we're up, the polls are great. When we're down, who cares about the polls? Me. I got to keep my job in power. And then finally, he just told you himself, MSNBC. If you listen to that garbage, that dumpster fire, they're lying to you on purpose. That's how we lied to you. He just told you. We have our liars go out and say it on MSNBC, and MSNBC hosts are like, of course, that's right. Joe Biden is great and young and dynamic. He's just the greatest. Now everybody, we're friends with Joe Biden. We have breakfast with Joe Biden. Joe Biden's the best. Oh, you lost the country. They're doing Project 2025. I told you it was an existential threat to democracy and to the country. Who cares? Me. I'm friends with Joe Biden. MSNBC. We F Democrats for a living. That should be their new slogan.
Yeah, it's so true. It's, I mean, I remember back we were talking about this on the Young Turks in 2019 and even late 2018 that Biden struggled even at that time to coherently and charismatically message almost anything. He was simply seen as a relief from Trump's horrendous assault upon us all during the COVID pandemic, right? So But we did have a candidate then, not to cry too much about it, who was charismatic, who has and continues to have the utmost integrity. No one's perfect, and is so much integrity that he's grumpy about it. And that was Senator Sanders. And I'm biased because I got to be part of that campaign, but that guy kept it real, and we need someone who keeps it real right now. Keeping it real, right? Because this is it. The data shows it very clear, and we saw this, with the aftermath of this election. People don't watch MSNBC and CNN. There's a fragmentation of media that's occurred as a function of the digital world, the internet, and so on, where we go on various podcasts and so on. And on these podcasts, and particularly like real-like content, you have to get people's attention. There's no one worse at getting or keeping your attention than our former president. So, I mean, this is what has occurred. But on top of it, I think the most insulting part of it is the talking down at all of us and insulting all of our intelligence. And that's why people are like, look, nothing's fundamentally changed. He said nothing's gonna fundamentally change. At least this kind of horrible now current president in Trump acknowledges grievances and says he'll blow it all up. But it was a giant plate of nothing when it came to Biden. And per our earlier comments, he could have done a much better job of messaging if he was even capable of charisma, or his surrogates could have been in an attention economy around some of the good things that were actually accomplished, which were a few on the domestic policy level with the last administration, and he didn't do it.
Super last thing, Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson from Axios are writing a book about who was responsible for the cover-up of Biden's mental decline. Mainstream media writing a book about that is like O.J. Simpson writing a book about how he's gonna find the real killer. Okay, it was mainstream media that covered it up. Stop listening to liars. We'll be right back. All right, so let's go to comments here. But first, I forgot to look here to see what I was supposed to plug. State of the Union, that's on Tuesday. We're gonna do something super interesting, okay? So, can I say it now? Yeah, I can say it, okay. We're gonna do joint coverage with Dr. Phil's Merritt Street Media. And so I'm gonna go down to Texas. We're gonna do something bipartisan to cover it. We're gonna have Democratic legislators on, but also Republican, probably cabinet members, but we'll see how that goes. And we're gonna have a town hall with 25 Democrats and 25 Republicans. And so we're gonna have some coverage before the State of the Union, and then a lot of coverage after the State of the Union. So don't miss it. You can watch it right here on tyt.com or on Young Turks on YouTube or wherever you normally get Young Turks. So that's gonna be super interesting next Tuesday. How are folks gonna react? How are the Democrats and Republicans gonna react? How am I gonna react? How is Dr. Phil gonna react? I don't know, but it's gonna be interesting. So check us out wherever you get your podcasts. On Shop TYT, we got all of the Operation Hope, Team Joy, all those fun shirts that I love. Check that out. Populist Plank is on TYT.com. 6 positions that all of America overwhelmingly agrees with. We had Dan Osborne, the independent in Nebraska, signed recently. Ro Khanna did, Marie Newman did, Nina Turner did. So check out the Populist Plank. And so now on member section, Eclectic Miscellanea wrote back, unfortunately for Michael LaRosa, unless we've given the green light to make these statements about Biden, he's probably never going to work in Washington again. Look, I'll guarantee you he did not get a green light. He's saying the most obvious things possible, that Joe Biden was unfit and everyone around him knew it, but everyone else is still either keeping quiet or still pretending Biden could have won. Yeah, he'll be punished for that. The only way that he gets to work again is if a progressive or a populist candidate wins the primary in 2028. They punish people who tell the truth. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Jordan, and Ramesh with you guys. So we're gonna do a bonus episode for the members tonight. And that's where we've got a bunch of stories that we love for you. The one I've been telling you about, sorry we just ran out of time. We're gonna put it in the bonus episode. Bill Burr versus Ben Shapiro, you're gonna love that one. Megyn Kelly versus the Trump administration? Kinda. That's an interesting story. So we got that for you, and then hopefully we get to the Tim Walz story because he's back. That's fun. So hit the join button below to become a member, or tyt.com/join. By the way, we're trying to get to 2,000 members. I don't know if we're gonna be able to do it by the end of this month. The end of this month is now. So let's see if you can go there. And remember, with annual membership, you're getting 2 months off. So check that out if you can. Okay, now I wanna go to some of your comments because you're part of the show. Slanu wrote in on Super Chat. How about starting a fund for America's Last Bought Law? With enough talk, influencers, and donations over time, Americans can cut wealth from politics and end the donation system. Together, you can buy the last law ever. So that idea is basically the idea for Wolfpack that I started about a dozen years ago now. So wolf-pack.com, that needs to be bipartisan, nonpartisan, and it is. We'd love to have Democrats, Republicans, independents come in. So the idea was to raise enough money and to raise enough attention and volunteers to actually spend all of it on one issue, getting money out of politics, so we could liberate the rest of the issues and actually have a democracy where we debate and decide what's right for the country. Right now, we're not having any of that because the donor class has won in every level. And just when you thought it was awful under the uniparty of the establishment Democrats, establishment Republicans, Trump's like, uniparty, hold my beer. Okay, Elon, you're my top donor, you get domestic policy and all the mineral rights you want. Miriam Adelson, you're my top 3 donor. Okay, you're getting foreign policy. So Israel can take Gaza and the West Bank, and they're rolling in tanks to the West Bank right now. I mean, he's just selling off the government. Yep. And with a story we didn't get to, one of the crypto guys totally let off the hook. Why? He donated, well, he didn't donate. He gave $75 million to one of Trump's nonsense crypto meme coins. Trump just gets to put that in his pocket. And then he ended an investigation of him. The donors have never been more in charge than they are right now. And so and what Ramesh has been saying throughout is using the guise of populism was smart marketing, but he's not actually doing any of the populism. And the Democrats are so stupid for not understanding the power of populism and how it would be popular. They didn't do it either. They were never going to do it. At least Trump figured out, oh, this is how you get votes. And then of course you put everything in your own pocket, and Elon's pocket, and Miriam's pocket, etc. So, all right, a lot more stories in the bonus episode coming up right now for the members. We'll see you there.